Stephanie, I'm so excited to talk with you today. Larkin Kendall is the one who told me about you, and I instantly like went and followed you on Instagram. And honestly, I was like, I've interviewed hundreds of photographers now, and look, I try to have a good pulse of what's going on, at least in the slight wedding industry. And I saw your work, and I was like, what in the world is happening? And so that's a compliment. I think that's a compliment. So, so welcome to the show. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Thank you. I'm excited.
It's so crazy. I want to ask you before we kind of get officially started, but like, how do you know Larkin? Which I know is like kind of a silly question. We'll talk mostly about you, I promise. But Larkin's great. And then I feel like you two are like the soccer moms of wedding photography, but in a cool way, like you're the cool moms.
Really cool
Yeah.
soccer moms.
But how did you guys know each other? And then give me a little bit of background on your story of how you got started. And I think I was looking on your website. You've lived in like 4 different places recently, like as an adult. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I met Larkin. She had reached out to me a few years ago to teach at a workshop
Okay.
with her, Kinfolk, and with her and our friend Morgan with In Frames. And so that was the first time I met Larkin. And then it's kind of like the rest is history. We kind of just really hit it off and became best
Were you guys,
buds.
is that when you say kinfolk, was that like the actual kinfolk, like the like Northwest?
Oh,
No. Okay.
no.
I was like, what?
We just thought we were being super trendy and we're like, oh yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
kinfolk.
Okay. Yeah.
It's cute. It's not a thing anymore. We did one workshop and it was great. All the attendees loved it, but we were like, no, we're not doing that
Yeah. I
again.
was listening to another podcast and I teach like live online workshops, but obviously for these reasons, that's the reason we do them that way. But like, I've been to a few workshops attending, and then like I've taught at a few that I've been invited to speak at. And I didn't
Oh yeah.
realize, like, let's say you want all the speakers to be paid, and paid moderately well, and you want to provide like a cool experience. It's expensive to put on a workshop.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. It's so
Yeah, like people are like,
pricey.
oh, you're getting, whatever attendees you have multiplied by the budget or the ticket price. But you're like, not really, like, not at all. Like,
No. Oh my gosh. If you're hosting a workshop, I feel like you just need to plan on breaking
yeah,
even.
yeah,
Because if you want a good workshop, then you got to put a lot of money
yeah.
into
That's
it.
the thing I'm interested now that I'm 32 and, there's less workshops that I like want to attend for the sake of the education, but more for networking and stuff like that. Like, I'd
Oh,
love to
okay,
go
yeah.
to like Engage, like those they're like big retreats. They're like luxury wedding retreats kind of.
Oh, I've never
Okay.
heard of
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
one.
I'm not sure. I literally know nothing about them other than it's like only luxury, like the people who would shoot like the Kardashians' wedding kind of thing. Like that's,
Oh, okay,
or
got it,
like
got
Jose
it.
Villa would be there or whatever. Or
Oh, yes.
yeah. So
Okay,
like,
yeah. I
yeah,
know who he
yeah,
is.
yeah. Again, not my world by any means as a DC wedding photographer, but like something interesting to kind of learn and network and I think we
Oh,
found
yeah.
like you and I and Larkin, and we have different styles, of course, but like we'd be going there to hopefully find one edgy planner, and be like, okay, this is like we're gonna be their person,
You're my
versus
girl, yeah.
like the light and airy mansion, granite vibes.
Got
Yeah,
it,
so like
yes.
I want to go to that, and then but other than that, I've been like joking with other photography industry friends. I'm like, guys, like anytime we hang out, if we talk business, it's a write-off. So I'm like, let's just plan a post-COVID. I'm like, let's just plan a really cool retreat somewhere. And just, we'll do like reflecting and talk about business over breakfast. And then we'll go, do whatever, or go like practice our photo
Yes.
stuff. So, um,
Oh,
so I'm just
yes.
like, we need to travel more. And I'm like, let's just do it together so we can write it off. Anyway. Yeah.
That's hilarious. Very
Yeah.
smart.
So tell me a little bit more about you and your story. Like, how long have you been a photographer? And then, yeah, like fill in the gaps of you've been published a bunch. You've lived in like a million different states. Married to a startup entrepreneur. Not even a startup anymore, I don't think. But
Yes.
yeah, like so. Yeah, tell me everything.
Yes. So I started photography. This will be my 10th
Okay.
year doing
Awesome.
weddings, which just like blows
Yeah.
my mind.
Can I
But
interrupt you there? Can I ask you this?
yeah.
I'm so sorry. This is a very
Yes.
specific question.
No.
Do you count those 10 years? And this is just nitty gritty. There's no right or wrong answer. Are those 10 years full time, or are those 10 years since you shot your first wedding and liked it?
10 years since I shot my
Okay.
first wedding.
Literally
My first garbage wedding.
Friday was my 10-year anniversary. So yeah, we're very close.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. And it
awesome.
was like I wasn't full time for 10 years. I've been full time for like 7
Yeah,
or so, but it was like that was the day that I was like, okay, I think this could be fun. And now we haven't stopped, So
that's
congrats, that's
awesome.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess I wasn't full time. I was just doing it part time because I was in
Yeah.
college. I got my degree in biology, was going to get my master's. I know,
What
right?
in the world?
I know. And then I was going to get my master's in molecular
Okay.
biology. And
Casual.
then turns out grad school out of state is real
Yeah.
pricey. So I was like, I'm going to take a year off. I'm just going to do these weddings and save up. But then it kind of just like took
That's
off
awesome.
and I actually liked it a lot more. And I never went back to
That's
school.
insane. What fill in some
Yeah.
gaps for me. Where were you at that time? You said out of state. Where were you living?
Yeah. So I grew up in Illinois, went to college at Illinois State, then moved to Colorado, was going to do grad school at CU. Then my husband got a really awesome opportunity in Arizona. So we moved to Arizona for about
Oh
two
my goodness.
years. But then he got another, even better opportunity in
Yep.
Manhattan. So we moved to New York. Loved New York. That was probably my favorite place I've ever
Mm.
lived. But then we had a oopsie baby. So we then moved to, got pregnant, gave birth in New York, loved New York, but then he transferred from the same company to Santa
Okay.
Monica. So we lived in Santa Monica
Oh my
temporarily,
goodness.
decided you're too good for what you're doing, do your
Yeah.
own thing. So now he has his own thing and we get to live wherever we want. And we came back to Boulder.
That is awesome. Yeah. When did you said come
Yep.
back to Boulder? Was he from Boulder or like?
No, he was from Central Illinois too, but we just, right after we both graduated college, we moved to
Okay.
Boulder and
Oh my
loved it.
goodness, man. That
Yeah.
is like. How old is your first kid? Can I ask?
Yeah, she will be 3 on
Yeah, that is like
Friday.
a whirlwind of. Oh my goodness. That's
I
it.
know. It's crazy. She's been to so many flights, so many weddings with me. Just, she's my little travel
Yeah,
girl.
man. People think they hate moving, but like you guys probably hate moving. I mean, getting there is awesome,
It's
but like packing up
insane.
all the ish. Um,
Yes. Oh my gosh,
that is
yes.
insane. That's insane. So
Yeah.
graduating college and you want to take a year off hypothetically, right? I
Mhm.
just want to ask you right off the bat, like what clicked for you where you're like, hey, this is working. I think I'm just going to go for it and take this thing full time. Or was it like a financial thing? Was it like you had a bunch of leads coming in? Was it a certain shoot, right? That like maybe was a banner shoot, right? And everybody's like, oh my gosh, I want Stephanie
Yeah.
now. Like what made that tipping point for you?
Yeah, I think actually moving out to Colorado and I mean, I had no kids, no real job or anything. So I would just be driving around all the time, like checking out all these awesome spots. Like I was from the freaking
Yeah.
Midwest. So like these mountains were just like blowing my mind. So I was just like shooting like crazy. And then that's kind of like when Instagram kind of blew up a little
Right.
bit more. So people were seeing me more on Instagram. So I was getting a ton more leads and I just loved it. It was super flexible. It was allowing me to be creative. And turns out I really liked that path. So yeah, it was
That's insane.
awesome.
That's insane. Was your Instagram as big as it is now, or like did you have a certain shoot, or were you like valedictorian or something, or did you play college sports? I don't know, like what.
No, it was definitely small. And I think what grew me was just like I did like a really cool elopement in Colorado, then like Junebug
Okay.
featured it, and then like I did like another wedding, and then like Green Wedding Shoes
Wow.
featured it, and like yeah, I feel like especially the feature pages, I feel like were a lot stronger in the
Yeah.
beginning, and so that benefited for me. So when they were shouting me out and stuff, my page just grew a
That's
ton.
awesome. That's super cool. Yeah, I feel like those were the
Yeah.
I've never been featured in either of those two places. Probably never will. But back no,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
don't
No,
say
it's okay.
that.
I'm not upset about it at all. But but like back in the day, they would feature less weddings in general, and then the ones they did were like
Mhm.
were trend setting, and they'd be like, boom, here it is.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, oh wow, like we need everybody from this, or like this is what we want, or this is so
Yeah.
revolutionary. Whereas now it's like they I think everybody's gotten like addicted to content, and they're like, hey, like nobody's gonna really notice if you do
Oh, for
100
sure.
weddings a day, green wedding shoes or Junebug, and like who cares, like as long as they're all cool and like they're less
Oh,
selective.
yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah,
definitely.
just
I
taking
agree.
over all of us SEO wise. But what is
Love it.
since then you've been crushing it. What is like now you live in Boulder, like how did you kind of reconcile with, did you always do elopements, or like how did you reconcile with being kind of bouncing around different places, or would you have to kind of like change your website title every time you guys moved? Like what did that look like?
Yeah. Well, we always had like a little homestead in Boulder. So wherever we moved, I always still said I was like
Mm,
based in Boulder, but I really marketed myself as like a travel wedding
sure.
photographer. So even though I was based in Boulder, I guess people hired me from all
Yeah,
over, just because the way I marketed and I traveled so much. So people weren't afraid to like hire me to come travel to their state or anything like
totally.
that. So, but I definitely I've only ever really done weddings, elopements, and engagements. Like every so often, maybe for like a close friend or something, I'll do like a family
Mm,
session or like a past bride and stuff like that. But I kind of stay away from
yeah,
that stuff.
totally. Well, yeah, you have to like, stick with what you feel comfortable with and like you feel good at,
Oh, yeah.
whatever. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's cool.
exactly.
That's awesome. What did that look like? Were there be weddings or a certain weekend where it's like you were in California and you're like, oh, got to fly back to Boulder for this weekend?
Oh my gosh, yes, I was a freaking psychopath sometimes when I would like book my weddings. I feel like I was just so hungry and excited, especially in the beginning and when I started finally getting like
Yeah,
good. And oh my gosh, there was one time I had like a wedding in New York, and the very next day I had a wedding in Oregon. Not even in like Portland. Like I had to fly into Portland, but then drive like another hour and a
yeah,
half to like Mount Hood,
yep,
something ridiculous. And I'm like, why the heck am I doing this to
yeah,
myself? And I've had like a wedding one day, and then the next day I had to go fly like out of the country because I had a wedding in 2 days in Iceland. And I'm like, this is just not
yeah,
smart. But I was like loving it at the time. I'm like, yeah, I'm 22. This is great. I'm traveling everywhere, which
yeah.
it was at the time. But now I'm like, I'm only doing 12 weddings a year, and that is
That's
it.
awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's like if you hear stories like that all the time. Or I have a friend named Robert J. Hill who he lives in Portland,
Mhm.
ironically, but he's been on the show, and he's like, I did the destination thing for 2 years. My wife and I were traveling everywhere. We're like 1 month we're living in Italy, we're living in France, whatever, all the cool stuff. But he was like, I hated everything. Like it was pretty, it was very cool. Like we have a
Yeah.
cool like family album from it, but it's like we weren't super happy. We weren't really fulfilled in what we were
Yeah.
doing. Um, but it's like I think that'd be a funny like airplane ad is like, like, hey, our flights are probably better than your personal boundaries. Right? Like if you're like, I'm only going to take 12 weddings, but American Airlines is like, hey, we'll get you there even faster if you wanted it. Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. And it's not that I didn't enjoy it. Like I loved it. And I'm so thankful. Like if it wasn't for wedding photography, I wouldn't have been able to go to half of the
Totally.
places that I've gone. So I'm really grateful and I loved it at the time. But yeah, I just think that times are different now. And I have 2 kids and I'm still willing to travel, just not
Yeah.
as
Do you feel
crazy.
comfortable? So we love like getting into nitty gritty here, and so nothing is off the table. Just for like, literally for my curiosity and people listening from all over the country, like, what do those 12 weddings? What's an average booking price look like for that, if you don't mind? And you don't have to like do as
Yeah.
high as possible, or what's average? Is that 10,000? Is that 25,000? Is that 5,000?
Oh gosh, no, I'm not that pricey. My cheapest package is 5,000 and then it goes up to
Okay,
10,000. So it's just anywhere in between there. And then if there's travel, then there's travel
sure.
costs on top of that
Yeah,
too, or international, then there's more travel costs because it's
visas and
a
yeah.
couple days and yeah, and all of
Okay.
that. So I'm not that high end.
I was just curious. You never know. Everybody.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Everybody's
my favorite thing
different.
about the show is that there's people who are, and everybody has different goals. Like I talk to a lot of my mentees, and I'm like, hey, like you could make more money if you wanted, but like, are you happy? Or like, do you where there's a threshold for everybody of like work life balance and kids, right? Like I don't have any kids yet, but even just making sure I'm home to be with my wife, or making sure I'm
Yeah, oh
making sure the
yeah.
grass gets cut, right? Like whatever, just stupid
Oh
home
yeah.
stuff that like will drive you crazy. You're not going to be thinking about your grass getting cut, even if you hire somebody to cut it while you're at a wedding. Um,
Exactly.
those boundaries are so important. But I love kind of hearing that nitty gritty, and also too, I love like uh, photographers who like. There are people who don't know who Stephanie Fisher is, right? But you'd be like, 60,000 Instagram followers. What are you doing? You know,
Oh
like
my gosh.
I had Pete Souza on the podcast earlier this year. Do you know who that is? See,
Mm-mm.
so he was President Obama's White House photographer and Ronald Reagan's. Why?
Oh
Yeah.
wow.
So
Oh
two and a
okay.
half million Instagram followers, right? But I love that. Like we have photographers from all over, and you would never know. And it's like, okay, like let me go. I don't know. I just want to have a really big table, and everybody gets to eat at the same table.
That's awesome. Oh
Um,
yeah. I love
but yeah,
that.
what is so now, yeah, I have in my notes to just ask you, what's your favorite thing you've watched, TV you've binged lately?
I love trash TV.
Like Cruel
Like I
Summer or
love.
like something else?
Okay. Like recently, three other people brought that up to me and I've never heard
Yeah.
of it, but I like posted how I love Real Housewives of Orange
Okay.
County. And they were like, oh my gosh, have you seen this show? It's crazy, blah, blah, blah. So I think I'm going to have
You
to
should. I
binge
haven't
that.
watched it
But
yet, but so we're gonna get really meta here. One, there's a podcast called Girls Gotta Eat, and so
okay.
it's mostly like love, sex, and dating. And these two comedians,
Okay.
and female comedians out of New York City, they talk every week. You would love it. I think you would dig it.
Oh my gosh, that
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
right up
you
my
would definitely
alley.
dig it.
Two New York girls talking about sex. Yeah.
This podcast got really meta, but I was like, you can tell I know Stephanie. Like the 10 weeks I've got of Stephanie so far, like I can pinpoint it. And but like they have their podcast, and they'll always do like a rec of the week or something like that, right? So
Oh, okay.
and so they
Okay.
recommended this Cruel Summer thing, but then I just listened to a lot of podcasts, unfortunately. I listened to Armchair Expert with like Dax Shepard and Monica Padman,
Oh,
and they had
cool.
Jessica
Okay.
Biel on, who is the
Okay.
producer for Cruel Summer. And so I was like, oh,
Oh, awesome.
yeah. So I had no
Okay.
idea. Like, I was like, what? Like, Justin Timberlake's wife, AKA Jessica Biel, also famous and also cool by herself, like, put on
Yeah.
this show that is like this weird women driven murder mystery. Like, yeah, it's on my list.
That's
But what
awesome.
else have you
Oh
been
my
watching that
gosh.
you've been loving?
I love
Oh,
Handmaid's
yeah.
Tale. I love it. Watching that like
Finale is
crazy.
Thursday, right? The time of this recording.
Don't remind me. I'm a whole episode
Okay. Okay.
behind. So I know I'm gonna like try to stay off social media so I don't. Oh, I love that
That's
show.
awesome.
I
It's
love
so
that
cool.
show.
I loved when they were in
And
DC, and you had like all these like cinematic views of all the handmaids on the Lincoln Memorial. I was like, that's where I live. So I'm like,
oh
what?
my gosh. Oh, so that's
Yeah,
really
it's
cool for
insane.
you. Yeah. And I love The
Of course.
Bachelorette. I'm
Yeah.
watching that shitty stuff
Yeah.
right now. I just love
That's
it.
awesome.
I love it. I feel like I'll never be too old for that
Yeah.
drama.
Well, because it's like it's almost, maybe I won't say that. We'll just say that the Bachelorette's theme is going to not change, right? Like it's people who are trying to find love or whatever.
Yes.
And it's like Next, MTV Next from back in the day.
Oh
But it's
my
like
gosh, it kind
a
of
crap
is.
ton
Yeah.
of people, and then no matter what age you are, the viewer is, they're like, no, I'm gonna watch this. Like this is the tension and the drama I want to see, and like the different characters, and like who's the villain and who's the hottie and all that stuff. So no, I totally get that.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. Wow. Next, what a comparison. What a
Yeah,
throwback.
yeah. That's what I always think about when this is so weird. Whenever I'm like on a phone call with a couple, right? So I'm trying to like sell in my own way and be myself. But I'm also like, I really hope you like me, right? Like our job is like people pleasing at some level. And like, as much as I want to be like, my clients choose me. And there are plenty that do. And I love that. But I also want to be like, my mortgage would like this couple to choose me, so.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, I agree.
I love that.
I mean, any wedding that's going to pay me crazy amount of money, I'm like, oh, yeah, you're definitely my style.
Yeah. You're like, I'll try. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody the other day that I was like, like over time I've gotten more work boundaries, right? Where I'm like, okay, we're only like, it all got messed up with COVID, but pre-COVID it was like 1 weekend off a month. We're gonna not shoot any weddings or anything like that. Like, so we can have a weekend to ourselves, that kind of stuff. We're not shooting on my birthday. We're not shooting on holidays anymore. That kind of stuff. But then COVID hit, and I was like, I'll shoot everything. Like, whatever. We gotta make this happen. And then, but I was talking to somebody the other night, and I said, for the right number, I would shoot at any time, anywhere on the planet. I was like, everybody has a number. It sounds sad, but
Oh, for sure.
Like, sorry guys, this is we can retire now, so we're leaving.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I completely agree.
What's one of the things, I've looked at a lot of your work, and honestly, we talked about like how my first impression was like, what in the world? But I like it a lot. It's super cool, especially on the East Coast. Like East Coast, New York is like setting some trends, but I feel like the West Coast and now in Colorado as well is like, they're okay with getting weird and like trying and just like doing different stuff. And the East Coast is still like kind of proper, or whatever.
Okay, yeah.
And so like
that makes sense because nobody books me on the East Coast unless it's like New York City.
Right. Like you're a Brooklyn person.
But that's all I get.
Yeah. Like you would not, myself included, we would not shoot at like Gotham Hall in New York City or like a fancy, Manhattan venue. It would only be in Brooklyn, like most likely. Yeah. Like the cool, hip, kind of sketchy part of Brooklyn.
Yes.
But, what are you thinking now work wise? Like, do you, and I'm just asking very practically, like, does being married and having like a second income help you feel like you can be more creative during your sessions because it's like you get to be more of yourself and create, or like the card box elopement or the cardboard elopement, and then like the or like the breast cancer thing just for fun, just to create for yourself? Like, did you just feel like, okay, yeah, like I get to make stuff for me that resonates with me, and that's all that matters right now? Like, how do you go about that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I think especially with COVID and all of my weddings rescheduling, I could like really sit down and be like, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want my brand to look like? Yada, yada. So that's when I kind of branched out and just started shooting some like ideas I've had in my head. And like with the cardboard one, that was a dress company. And she was like, I would love for you to do something a little different, blah, blah, blah. So I shot for them, but she was like, I want it to be a little different. So I'm like, okay, that's awesome. That was really fun. So I would love to dabble in some more like brand work, but still make it like couple based. Like I love shooting couples. And I know that I love doing that, and I love shooting weddings too, but I took it down a notch, only shooting 12. So that way I can really focus on like keeping my brand like really authentic to what I'm trying to have it look like, if that makes sense. Sure. Like I feel like the less weddings I have, the more I can focus on getting to know my couples and what they like. And like, for example, this past wedding I did in Colorado, they got married at like a barn and with horses and stuff like that, which isn't typically my style, but I've just had so much more time. Like I got to know them, and like, I'm like, okay, you like really like me because of like XYZ. So I'm going to incorporate that, even though like aesthetically it's not on brand with what I'm shooting on Instagram. If that
or not
makes
you
sense.
anymore, right? Like there's, I always found, now that we've been doing this a while, like you might have a bride who's been kind of eyeing your ish for like 3 years, and they still love the Stephanie of 3 years ago. And they're like, they like what they see now, but they're like, something else was the initial like hook, Again,
Yes.
going back to Next, maybe it's like she has really nice eyes, or he's got a
Yes.
great beard, and then like even if you shave it, right, or you got like eye surgery for some reason,
Yes.
it'd be like different.
Hmm.
So that happens a lot too, or like you said, like getting to know couples. Something I found really valuable in like my contact form for a while was I would just ask couples like. And of course, some people would just be like, "We want pretty photos," which again, like helps you kind of weed out stuff. But I was like, what resonates with you and your partner about our work, uh,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
for some people, like for the most part, for us, it would be especially out here. There's a lot of like Barbie and Ken, light and airy, whitewashed kind of stuff, and it's totally fine. That's the city, right? It's like old buildings, historical stuff. But like I posted a lot of reception work that was still like colorful and flattering for the most part, and like pretty cool. And couples would say that, and they're like, "We really love your reception stuff." And I was like, "There is no photographer in DC getting booked for the reception stuff." I was like, "I'm gonna lock down on
Yeah.
this. Like, I'm gonna put 2 or 3 dancing photos in my portfolio instead of portraits, and like, it's really worked out." And so, ironically, it's like I have couples who are ready to party, or like they're we do all the have
Yeah.
to
That's
do all the have
awesome.
tos, and then we get to go to the get tos is kind of how we describe it. And it's like they're still down to do whatever, like if we want to do a portrait or two, but they're like, you can tell it's they want it to be efficient, not in a mean way, but they're like, Adam, we
Hmm.
want to let you do your thing, but we're looking forward to like people raging on the dance floor. Like we like
That's
Saturday I came
awesome.
home and she was like, how's the wedding? And I was like, summer weddings are back. Like it's crazy. I was like, we saw 4 different sets of nipples from 2 different genders. Um, and she was like, "Oh, it was wild, huh?" And I was like, "It was wild." But like, I love that about weddings. Like people feeling like unencumbered, or like fearless, or feeling like they can be whoever they are. They're
Yes.
celebrating, and especially after the last year, like, um, it's not on them for me to be weird about how they want to express that, as long as it doesn't endanger me. Which, like, as a fat white bearded dude, most stuff doesn't. Other than heart disease. So like, totally, I'm like, let them do their thing, and so. Yeah, I feel like that's having couples that like what they like about your work is like super important.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree. I think it's more about like when you get the inquiry, I feel like there's still so many photographers out there that are like, oh my gosh, this wedding is going to be at this venue and they're going to be super boho and have all of this in XYZ. And like, I feel like what is setting me apart right now is that I'm past looking at that
Mm,
aesthetically because I feel like you get a lot of photographers who are like, what's going to make my Instagram look
yeah,
amazing? You know what I
yeah,
mean? Instead of like really connecting with the couple and who they are. And that I think is what makes my photos not better. Better is not the right word, but more like attention
yeah,
getting is that I have like a connection with my couples and that shows in the
sure.
photos. Cause like I'm more comfortable getting like these intimate poses and stuff like
Mm,
that, if that
yeah.
makes
How do you
sense.
go about? Obviously, this could be bigger than an hour-long conversation, but like, is that what you're looking for when you have full creative control? Is like you want really intimate stuff with the couple, and what does that even mean to you? Is that like, like intimate to me is like half clothed making out in a field somewhere or like at home session, but
Yes.
like what does that look like to you? And in an ideal world, how are you getting there?
Yeah. So right now, I feel like because of COVID, I like spent some time like shooting some like just like creative ideas and like couples who have, I mean, I didn't do like a 180. Like I've always been a little bit different. So I've always drawn in those people, but now I just kind of took it to the next
Sure.
level. And so I'm still getting these inquiries. And then it was just like one couple was from Arizona and they wanted to do their engagement session. But they were like, we just want to do something like a little different. Like, we don't want it to be traditional. We're not traditional. And I was like, okay, well, I have this idea. Do you want to like grab like a couch from Goodwill and I have this TV? Let's go throw it in the desert and do that. So then it's kind of like a snowball
Yeah.
effect. Like, they're like, oh, wow, look at From the Daisies. Like, she did this as an engagement session. Like, so that's like opening eyes to like other people who they want to do an engagement session, but it's going to be like, oh, like it doesn't have to be like in a field and like mountains. It could be something that's more like expressive
Yeah.
to us.
Totally.
So,
And I mean,
yeah.
what is have you with photographers like yourselves, where at least what we see, and you try to do your best, right? Like we talked about, to like show work that resonates with you and is maybe a little bit offbeat or weird or quirky or however you want to
Mhm.
describe it. Like, have you seen couples that have you run into the situation where they're like, yeah, we want to do something a little bit different, and then they tell you their idea and you're like, that's not that different, or you would never say that, but like, but you're like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not, like,
Yeah, and I mean, essentially, like I said, I'm only booking people based off if I have a connection with them or
mm,
not, and not based off like their style necessarily or their aesthetic or anything like that. It's just strictly like if we connect and we bond, because that's what I feel most comfortable
yeah,
shooting. So even if they're like, "Oh, we love we love shooting in the field in front of the mountains." And I'm like, okay, great. Like, I love you as a couple. Like, I really connect with you. And like, if you're a strong photographer, you don't need all these other like props and gimmicks to have your brand reflect, if that makes sense. So, like, regardless if it's in a field or it's in the desert with a couch and TV, like, people are going to like see the photos and be like, oh, From the Daisies shot that. From the Daisies shot that.
that's really cool. Where did From the Daisies come from?
From when I was in high school and I got like my first little Canon Rebel. And I was like, oh, I'm going to take all these like selfies of me and my friends. And like I started an album on Facebook called From the Daisies, and it was from Alice in
I
Wonderland.
love it. That's awesome.
And I was babysitting kids one day, and she said she was singing a song that said From the Daisies. And so it just kind of took off. And that's how my name started. And I feel like it just started really quick. So I'm like, oh, I can't change my name. But then I was engaged. So I was like, I was Stephanie Seifert, but I can't change it to Stephanie Fisher.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
Just From the Daisies. That's super cool. That's
yeah,
awesome. That's awesome.
yeah.
What do you think is like in the photography industry, like um what do you think is something that you see that you really, really like and are encouraged by what's going on? And then what is something that you're kind of discouraged by that you're like, oh, I wish this was different, or it's just something that maybe for you try to like stay away from?
Yeah. I feel like I definitely try to just stay in my little like circle of community of friends rather than trying to be like, oh, I'm going to be friends with this big
Mm,
photographer, this one, this one, this one. Like, I'd rather just have like a tight knit circle of like photographers that like I
sure.
trust, vendors that I really love and like recommend, instead of trying to be like Miss
Yeah.
Popular, which I feel like, yes, I have like a good handful of followers, but like, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of like fakeness out there in the
Sure.
community, especially with photographers. They just want like the newest and the best thing, and they're, even if it's not like true to
Mm.
themselves. So I try to stay away from that. And I could go on and on about how
Please
I
go
think
on
our
and on. That's
industry is a
okay. Like
little
we got time.
it's just, I don't know. I really can't stand it. I actually talk to Larkin about this like all the time. And it's like, there's so many people that are just like, they're fake and they're just like, look at my feed, yada, yada, yada. But it's like, they're not making any
Mm,
money. They're like throwing off this perception of like, oh, look at all of this stuff that I'm
yeah.
shooting. But really, they probably like, oh, your wedding is really cool. I'm not going to charge you travel
Yeah.
for it. And like, but now my feed looks really
Yeah.
cool. And like, oh, I'm going to have like a comment for comment group. So like my engagement's really good. And like, so it's like, oh, okay. Like all these comments are like not even true comments because
Yeah.
you're like paying somebody, or you're being like, oh, I'll comment if you
Mm.
comment. And it's just sketchy. And I don't
Yeah,
like
I didn't
that.
even know. So I didn't know that comment for comment groups were still a thing. Like I knew Instagram pods was what they were called back in the day. That was a thing. But Instagram knows
Yes.
when that happens, they can tell now. And so like I think that's like how they died
Good.
out like a few years ago. So whoever's doing that, stop it.
It's freaking terrible.
That's so funny. I want to push back just for fun. Well, what if, and maybe this is just you're thinking of like a particular person, which I'm so sorry to this person, but but what if like for you, we'll put it in your stance, and let's say this person is like, again, because everybody's different, so I want to give kind of room for them as like, maybe they are single and like they're not making money on this cool destination, right? It's somewhere they really love. It really resonates with them. Or like, for you, you're like, I'm only taking on 12 weddings or whatever, but it's like, it's the work that resonates with you, right? And if that's the only amount of couples who can say yes or whatever, or like I've talked to other photographers where they're like, we book 8 to 10 if we're lucky, but 8 to 10 of those, they love us and we can do whatever we want.
Yeah.
So maybe it's something like that, right? Or does it just come off poorly? Like, are they weird about it?
What do you mean? I don't understand what your question is.
Well, just, what is fake about that part? Is like, if maybe they're not making any money, but it did like the idea of a starving artist,
got it,
right? Like if they're true to their art, then they're true to
Yes.
the art.
Yes, I get that. And I feel like if you're going to do work that is free, essentially, then it should be something along the lines of like more of a styled shoot rather than doing like an actual
Yeah.
wedding. And I just feel like, I mean, this is your job and you need to be getting paid
Totally.
for it. So, in my opinion, like if you're out there taking like all of these weddings, it's just, and you're not getting paid for it, I just like, what the heck is the freaking point?
Yeah.
Like, so you can have your Instagram feed look really cool. Like if you want to do something like what I do, like if I have an idea and it's really awesome, then I either save it for a couple who's going to do an engagement session and they want to do something weird. I'm like, okay, here's this idea. Or if I want to shoot it right now, I'm like, okay, well then I'm just going to do it myself and not take on free work. If that makes sense.
Totally. But what if, again, this is just me playing devil's advocate, but like, what if they, that's the only opportunity that they would get to go to that place, or again, it's a paid opportunity, a break-even opportunity even to like get to exercise what they want to do work-wise.
Okay, yeah, I get that. Kind of like a bucket list.
Yeah. Maybe something like that.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. And I mean, I guess I'm being like really harsh towards like the not paying work because I'm being a hypocrite because when I first started off and I like wasn't married and didn't have kids, like my first international wedding was in like Lake Como, and I charged them just for travel. And which I like at the time I was like kicking myself. It's hard because I was kicking myself because it was just like, oh, I felt like I was being taken advantage of almost because by my clients, like they were sweet and I love them, but they were like, oh, well, you're here. So like, even though we booked you for 7 hours, like, can you do 10? But like, they're technically only paying me for like travel and they just like want more and more and more and more because they can like smell that like, oh, you're so desperate to go to Lake Como and
well, maybe, I mean, maybe it's a middle ground, right? Like there's I've been there too, right? And there's definitely a balance where if couples are going to try and take advantage of you, they're going to try and take advantage of you. But like, it's up to you to have your own boundaries, which a lot of us, when we started out, we did not have those though, right? Because we're in Lake Como, right? Or Maui or Iceland or whatever it is. So I get that too. Like you don't want photographers to be taken advantage of,
Yes, I agree. So I think there's nothing wrong with having a bucket list, but I think it's like when does the line get drawn from like, okay, you do to like 1 to 2 weddings a year, assuming you're shooting like a big handful of weddings, 1 to 2 weddings that you're just like, okay, well, I'm going to do it discounting because like I really want to shoot here, I really want to travel here, like I love you guys as a couple, but like you're not able to afford me, fine. But like I know there's some photographers out there who will literally do weddings for like $0. Like they're paying to shoot their wedding. And I'm like, what's the point? Like, are you genuinely excited to shoot this wedding? And like, would you take this wedding if you couldn't post it? Like, that's, I think, a really important question to ask. It's like, okay, are you paying out of your pocket to shoot this wedding? And if you can't shoot it, if you can't post it, would you still shoot it? And I feel like a lot of photographers can't honestly say that, they would.
Yeah, it's definitely, that's probably a good like place of where like you can split the differences. Like, there's the non-public version of like Stephanie wants to go to Turks and Caicos. She's like, okay, great. That sounds awesome. Book the wedding there. You go to Turks and Caicos, you shoot it. And, but then let's say it's Turks and Caicos isn't really on your mind and you're like, whatever, which is silly because it's probably awesome. But let's say you're not really into it, or it's like a bad weekend, right? Or it's like the weekend of Thanksgiving or something stupid, which is a true story for all of us. But yeah, like if you can't post it, then you have to want to go to that place. Like that's the next level. Or you did have a connection with a couple, or you can go there and like try to find some other shoots or fly another couple down or something like that. But I get that. But on one hand, and again, I do none of this. I shoot only in DC, so I'm just playing with you.
That's totally fine.
But I could see some people. So let's say if they, they only want to shoot what they can get on their feed, and maybe they're still building. This is just me giving devil's advocate. Again, only because I do this, talking to photographers every day. Is like they're building their ish, right? And maybe and maybe that's the way, right? Like that maybe they don't have the branding, or they're not good enough, honestly, to get paid full price and travel and go to Lake Como, right? Let's say that, right?
Oh yeah.
The way I look at it is, and it depends how it comes off, right? Again, like people can smell gratitude, or they can smell, showboating, right?
Yeah.
But at some level, I could see people doing, like, the few times I've taken a discount, how I've looked at it, and obviously I have to like still hit my numbers and stuff like that and have good boundaries, is I've looked at it as advertising. Like I'm paying for advertising for the future of my brand. And so I don't know if these people are doing that. I'm just playing around. I'm just like messing around with it.
No, yes. And that makes sense. And I guess when you actually asked the question, I was just assuming
the worst.
Instantly thinking about photographers who are like, photographers who are established. So like not photographers who are just starting off. But like, yes, if you're just starting off, then you have no business charging $5,000 for a wedding, because you don't have that experience. You don't have that portfolio. So yes, if you're like starting off and like you're still new, like you've never traveled international, then obviously take that discount.
Yeah. And go there, have fun, eat food, whatever, like be broke. I'm just kidding.
And obviously Instagram is great. Like it is, like you said, it's free marketing. I love Instagram. Like that's how I get like 80% of my clients is Instagram, actually, which is crazy. And I'm like, is my SEO working? Like,
I can go check after the show.
But you guys finding me on Google. But yeah, I just think the point I'm trying to make is that what makes a strong photographer is if you actually enjoy creating that art instead of like the look at me mentality.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, because it's like if you're doing this solely for the purpose of like flexing, like
yes, which there's a lot of that out there.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Like, there's something about that kind of attitude, and I've been there, and there are still weddings now where like you're excited that you created something cool, right, or a cool shot or a cool moment.
Oh, for sure.
But it's like, if it's only, you can smell, there's certain photographers that rub you the wrong way and it's just for the flex. And, but the reality is, and they don't want to talk about it. But like I said, like in other interviews, like I've talked to these people's heroes, right? Like they've been on the show. I talked to all y'all's heroes and I'm like, they're all burnt out or they fucking hate doing this. And it's because they spent their time chasing the dragon, flexing, and they were like, actually, I'd really like to just shoot weddings 20 minutes from my house and be with my partner, or go paddleboarding in the morning before a wedding, or whatever they like to do.
Yes.
So it's like, but again, too, that's like that's a young man's game. That's a old man's game. The young people don't think about that stuff.
Yes.
Once I got in my 30s, I became the most boring photographer ever. I was like, I don't care about impressing other photographers. I don't care. Like,
oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, is that I think like when I was younger, and a lot of photographers who are younger and they were just traveling a ton and like booking so much, it's not even that they were like, obviously everybody has like a little bit of like an ego, especially like, oh, my wedding got like featured. That's like so awesome. But like wanting to impress your clients and your future clients is one thing. And then wanting to impress like your like
Sure.
community is another.
Totally.
Like impressing your clients is what you should want to do. And like all that travel, all of the shooting, like that's a really good hustle
Yeah.
mentality. And but I think you should do it for your clients because that's what's gonna, I mean, I like money at least.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
would rather get paid for my shit rather than
Yeah.
like post it for like Instagrammers and other photographers to think I'm
Totally.
cool.
Yeah. That's probably a good distinction. Like we did a few free sessions last year where we we were just trying to do we were trying to do some West Coast stuff. So there were some photographers I could tell you
Yeah,
after the
yeah.
show that I was like, what would it look like for us to try and do that out here? And it was pretty sketchy. But it was like, you know, I wanted to be okay to fail as well. Like if it didn't work out, I
Yeah.
wasn't going to post it. And I made sure the couples were cool with that. And I was like, we're just making something. We're trying something.
Yeah.
And this is what I saw in a lot of your work where you have like, I read like empowerment session and I was like, oh, I'm about to walk into what somebody would call a boudoir thing. And then I see that it's like flowers and an astronaut helmet and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, this is different.
Yeah.
This is like, I
Yeah.
still like it, but this is everything. This is have you ever seen like the movie Midsummer?
Okay, I love
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah,
Midsummer?
Midsummer.
Midsummer. I love that
It's
movie.
so weird and
I
artsy.
watched it 3 times just for like inspiration
Yeah.
purposes. Like the cinematography is just like, and what is that? A24?
That's
Is
who
that
does
who
it,
did
yeah.
the anything eight? Somebody commented the other day on my photo and was like, this looks like an A24. And I was like,
Yes, that's awesome.
thank you.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, that's 100% what I thought when I saw it. I was like, oh, okay, like there's a difference. And I was like, yeah, this is Midsummer A24 vibes. And I love that. So, but what that means is I have more movie and TV recs for you after the show. What
Yes, please
what
give
is
them to me.
something? So we talked about the negative. What is something you're encouraged by in the photography or wedding photography elopement community, if anything?
You know, it's funny because I say like what is negative is the community, but also what's positive is the community. Like I fucking love the
Sure.
community. Like there's like 5 photographers that I could like name off that are just like, wow, I love these photographers. Like these are my
Just as
go-to
people.
bitches. Like I love
Yeah.
them. Yes. And like 2 of them I've never even like met in person,
Wow.
but like I have their like phone number and like I talk to them and like it's just awesome. And even like vendors, like there's some like really awesome vendors and just like cool people in general that I've met through the community of like either working together at a wedding or like just being a photographer with me.
Yeah.
And I love
That's
it.
awesome. That's super cool. What is going a little bit deeper
Mhm.
on community towards the end? Also, like, welcome to the show. We've talked about all kinds of weird stuff, but that's
You know, I thought it was going to get a little weirder, to be honest.
I don't know. So yeah, I'm still new. It's on me. It's on me that we didn't go weirder.
Oh,
You know,
no,
yeah,
no,
'cause
no. No, I love it. I'm having a
We'll be the
great
second time
time.
you come on.
But I was like
Yeah.
prepared. I was like, oh my God.
No,
What's he
no,
gonna
no, no, no,
ask
no,
me?
no, 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 no. I'm still learning to step out of my own comfort zones with new people, right? Like I don't want to force somebody to be to get weird, but
Oh,
how
yeah.
for people to so something I've found is like, as I've grown, the one thing I wish I had known sooner for people listening to this is that community, is that vendor, that photographer community, to where like, even if you are in the same local space, which can be rare, but let's say you are in the same local space, like you got to have your people who are just not
Oh,
your
yeah.
competition. And I wish I had had that
Mhm.
sooner, to where like now I have some like sisters in the industry. If you and Larkin are the
Yeah.
moms, these are my sisters in the industry. And like, ironically, because we've done our own work on like our brand and our style, we don't talk about it, but I don't feel in competition with them, only because our work is so different and our goals are different on the photo side. But personally, we're experiencing very similar situations and client stuff. And right during COVID, if you
Yeah.
didn't have community, it was so hard to like, hey, it's everybody's first pandemic.
You're like, well, what are you
Yeah,
doing?
yeah, exactly. Like,
How are you making money?
totally. And it's like, like I tell all my photographer friends that I'm crazy busy this year, and they're like, busy's good, to people who don't know, but the friends who know, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I'm like, yeah, I'm making up for last year. Or like I took deposits
Yeah.
last year and now we're gonna make half as much and whatever. But like,
Yeah.
what is a tip or two? Just the tip. There's your weirdness for you, Stephanie. Sorry. Is jokes that I know would make Stephanie laugh. Is yeah. What would be a tip for kind of forming that community? Was that workshops? Was that just being open and vulnerable over DMs and be like, hey girl, I just love your work and I think you're a badass? Like, what is something that you would say to a photographer who's like, who wants to build more community?
Yeah, I feel like curbing your ego and just not giving a fuck and just really just staying in your own lane when it comes to creating, because I feel like what is going to really make your name get out there is that you're just creating your work, you're doing you essentially, and you're not like, oh, like this girl is like trying to be like me, or like, oh, this girl's presets are like so much like mine, or like, oh, this florist like charged me blah 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 for a styled shoot, and just like not having all this like negativity and just like really focusing on like you and your brand.
I love that.
Don't be gossipy, basically.
I love it. How did you get to know them? You know, or just through weddings, or again, like workshops, you meet Larkin as an example, or like the other people in your community, your like close knit community?
Yeah. Yeah. So Larkin, I met through a workshop. She's one of my close gal pals. And then this other girl, Monique, I did a workshop with her as well, through May and Co. That's how we met. But and she's like polar opposite than I am. She's very just like classic wedding photographer, like somebody who you would see in like Brides magazine. Sure. But like we just hit it off, and she's great. So like even people who aren't necessarily like shoot like me or my style, like I just connect with.
That's cool. That's super cool. So it sounds like workshops is an answer, like community.
A lot of workshops. Yeah. Even Instagram. I feel like Instagram too. Just, I mean, they find me and they're like, oh, I love your work. Or I find them and I'm like, oh, I love your work. And just kind of like chat. Sure. And like after like following and like watching their stories, I'm like, oh, I kind of like really like who this person is as a person. Or even there's sometimes where it's like, oh, I really like this person's work, but like, and then I watch their stories and I'm like, I don't really vibe with them as a person. So like, yeah, I love your work and I support your work, but like, I don't think that we would hit it off.
Yeah, no, totally. And it's hard too, because it's like, it's the internet version of a person, right? Like whatever we put out, we chose to put out, which is always like a weird, weird scenario, right?
Yes,
like
exactly.
This weekend on Saturday's wedding, I had a double this weekend, and I had Saturday's wedding. That's the name of the game this year, Steph. You don't even know. We have 72 weddings this year. It's obnoxious, and I don't say that.
So you were like, when I said 12, you're like, bitch, what are you doing? How are you picking
Yeah.
72 weddings.
So.
Okay, but when you say we, are you and your wife like a duo?
No, my wife never wants to work for the business ever.
No way. Oh my gosh.
We have 3 other, they're real to me, but I would say they're like tiny team members. So we have 3 other photographers on the team who like, got it. I think total they're each taking an average of like 6 weddings. So 72 minus 18, or whatever. So I have 60 by myself or whatever, basically. I still have to edit and call all their ish. So
you don't outsource anything?
I will edit I'll send the rest to the editor, but I still edit the like main gist, like the blog kind of stuff. Like we use like the anchor image method. Yeah.
Oh so it's gonna be crazy.
But nonetheless, so I was on Saturday. Yeah, pray for me, Stephanie. No.
Yeah.
But pray for my knees. No, I'm kidding. All of the body parts in the Missy Elliott song, just pray for those. No, but so yeah, we my bride on Saturday. Sorry, there's like an element of what I put online, right? Like what do people know about me? And again, I'm not like some celebrity or anything like that. Like I'm just a photographer in DC and, whatever. And only recently hit the like 10K mark to where people think you're an asshole immediately because you have a K, but whatever. But the bride on Saturday, knew the name of my cat, which I had not put out like maybe once, right? Like maybe
Oh,
just one time I like wasn't, and
yeah,
not that I
yeah,
wanted to hide the name of her cat, but I just wasn't really thinking about it. Or maybe like they saw my wife on a story, or they followed my wife somehow. And again, I like my wife does
yeah.
not do Instagram that much, so um, but it was really nice, right? That I was like, oh, she knows, like we can do. This was the nipple wedding, so I was like, oh, anything is happening today. Um, and but then there are still couples where like my last name is Mason, and that's like the name of our company or whatever,
Uh,
right? I wish I had a cool name like from the Daisies. And they'll still in their email just be like, "Hey Mason," and I'll be like, "That's not my name at all,"
oh yeah,
So like you're
oh
just
yeah.
another vendor, and I'm like, again, this is like post-COVID life, so I'm like, next year I'm not dollarating any of this ish. Like all my 2022 couples are like gung ho pro Adam, like we love each other and we could all be best friends. So
That's awesome.
um
Yeah, I
yeah,
love
we're
that.
not, but again, that's what happens is like the scarcity mindset eliminates some of your boundaries, and then you're like, well, yeah. So anyway, that's a subtopic.
No, yeah, I totally get that.
Yeah, no, that's a bummer. What do you have excited? What are you excited about happening the rest of this year? Anything you're really pumped about? Any shoots or just creative ideas that you're like, you don't have to tell us all the details, but something you're like really planning on doing, or like, yeah, or just mom
Yeah.
stuff or vacation stuff, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, this is my first year that I'm not shooting like 20 plus
Yeah,
weddings. Like usually I would do 25 to like 35 weddings, which is just like insane
yeah,
for me. But I just feel like I just value like my values have changed. Like I love being a wedding
mm,
photographer, but I also love being a mom. So this is the first year that I've really gotten to focus on my family and like my homestead and like my daughter's like older now and just like recognizes like, oh, mommy and daddy time. So like that's really important to me.
that's
So
cool.
yeah, I'm really excited for that. But I still like the weddings that I had this year, I'm just like so
That's
fucking
awesome.
pumped. Like every single couple, I'm just like, you're amazing. You're amazing. Like, let's go like make some fucking magic. But now that since I don't have as many weddings, I'm now doing two. Well, this is my second one. I did in March, I did like a creative content shoot. I had 10 girls come and I was just like, look, I have all these ideas in my head. Like, you guys seem to be like liking that I'm doing this for engagements and stuff. So, like, I'm going to just kind of like share it
That's
with
cool.
you. And like, so it's been awesome because I have people like apply for that, but which I hate. I hate when workshops are like, oh, you have to apply, you have to be cool enough. But like what I'm looking for is like people who want to like branch out and like kind of like challenge themselves, like shooting couples that they like typically kind of like what you said before. It's like kind of like a bucket list
Mm,
thing. It's like, oh, well, I've never shot this before, so I want to
yeah,
shoot it. So I'm like, okay, well, here is some of that. So I'm really excited for that, obviously, to like get these ideas, but like I didn't really realize how much I love. It's not really education. I'm not really teaching very much. It's basically like, here are these ideas I have if you want to tag along and
mhm.
shoot. But like seeing these like girls just like, oh my gosh, like it's such an honor. I'm like, it just feels so awesome that like I could give somebody some like motivation and inspiration and stuff like that. So I think that's what I'm looking forward
That's
to a
cool.
lot.
How does that work? So are they applying and then are they paying to come along? Are they coming along a shoot with you? Like, what's that look
Yeah.
like?
Yeah, so they're paying to come along and basically like I said earlier with workshops, like it's unless you're going like big and having this extravagant thing, like I don't know how people are
Yeah,
making a lot of money from it. So
totally.
like I'm just going to be transparent. I am not making a lot of
Sure,
money
sure, sure.
doing it, but it's just rewarding. Like I'm going to do these shoots
Right.
anyway
Yeah, yeah.
because like I'm excited about it. So like their money is essentially helping me pay for like
Totally.
models and like vendors and
Yeah.
stylists and
And
location
food,
like that
parking.
because
Very basic
yes,
stuff. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because I'm not one to be, I hate going into workshops and you're like, oh, you're going to get like all this exposure. You want to model for me for
Mm,
free? Or like, oh, hey, you're going to get exposure. You want to like donate your florals. Like, I'm all for paying my
yeah.
vendors. So that's basically what they're paying to come to the workshop is basically paying
Yeah.
for
That's
that.
super cool. I love that. That's awesome. And
Mhm.
that's like how many people are coming to you with you on one shoot? Just one person, or like do you only take a limited number of people
No, yeah, I'm only taking
per
10,
shoot?
which I know is like on the smaller side. Well, per workshop. So there's 4 shoots
Okay.
per like
Okay.
workshop. So, but I'm only taking 10 girls. And then how I did it last time is I broke it up into groups of
Okay.
2. So it was just like very small and like everybody watches me shoot like at first so they can kind of see how like I direct and stuff like that. And basically I just like break them up into 2 and I'm like, oh, if you're stuck, like I'll help you. But like otherwise you just like get whatever content
That's
you
cool.
want.
That's
So
cool. What is
yeah.
only ladies? No no bearded dudes welcome? You need to have a separate session.
Guys are welcome, and I say ladies, but guys are welcome, but I have yet to have a guy
All
want to
right, I'll come
come.
out. You know,
So,
I'll sign up.
yes, please
Again, work
do.
right off. I get to go to Boulder, and shoot some weird stuff. Like, uh,
Yes.
it
Yes,
would be my
yes.
first time shooting models. So yeah, yeah, never done
Really?
a style shoot, never shot models ever. Yeah,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh. That blows my mind because I love doing stuff
yeah.
like
It's a
that.
weird. So there's definitely like sessions that I've planned, but there's like no vendors involved. I'm like starting to branch into that. I think there's like this.
Okay,
Maybe you
yeah.
can help us get over this out here, and maybe this is because my hero said this, so you can like debunk my heroes. And again, I could probably do it myself, but there's an element of like what we show to our couples, and maybe we should just stop caring about this, right? Like maybe I should just stop caring. There's an element of like everything you see from me is 1,000% real. Real people,
Hmm.
non-models,
Yeah.
people who have a double chin when they're at their desk, people who have different sized
Yeah, I
boobs,
totally get
and
that.
again, like, and so there's like, at least for me, I feel this like onus. Like even if I did a real style shoot for like a vendor who or a venue who needed something, like unless
Yeah.
it looked real, like I probably wouldn't share it, right? Because I feel weird
Yeah.
about that, but I don't know why I feel about that, or just feel I never want it to be inauthentic, or like I'm
Yeah,
selling
yeah.
something I couldn't do for real. But that's the point of the style
Yeah,
shoot is like, no,
exactly.
this is what I could do. So, yeah,
Yeah, exactly. And I think it comes down to like what you're comfortable with. Like obviously like you prefer just doing like your weddings and like creating your art in that
yeah,
environment. And where like I do too, but like I also love setting up something that like I'm envisioning in my
totally,
head. And like I totally get that with the like the real having it be
yeah,
real. Like when I go to get like my models, like that's probably like what I spend the most time doing is I just like creep on Instagram and just look for like
yeah,
couples because one, I don't want like officially Quigley to be like
yeah,
who's like all over like
yeah.
Instagram. Like I'm not gonna ask her to be a
Her
model
and
when like
Jack and
she's
her cute baby
everywhere.
Max. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yes, and like I love
yeah,
them. Like I've met her and she's great, but it's like I'm not gonna ask somebody like that who's been like the face of like 100 styled shoots. Like I
sure,
just want to find like this girl who works at freaking
yeah.
Starbucks and her boyfriend, and they're
They're
just
hot.
like,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
yeah, yeah,
know.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like you fit my aesthetic of what I'm trying to achieve.
Totally. No, totally. Yeah. I think that's and again, for me, I'm like open to it. I'm like becoming more open to it because I'm also like, am I being creatively fed, right? And there's like this hard nose.
Hmm.
I should like think about it more because the only people who've told me are like older white dudes, and so there's like a balance, right? There's like they're like you should be able to create your art on wedding day with the variables you've been given, and I'm like, but what if I'm not
Yeah.
happy, or like or
Yeah,
like it's fine, it's
exactly.
cool, like I'm happy, but like I want to try making stuff like last year. Some of the stuff I did that I can't show is like I wanted to shoot something that scared me, and to other people it's probably
Uh-huh.
not a big deal, but I was like, I have to address this for me. If there's something I feel weird shooting, like I should keep asking myself why and use the camera to find out.
Yeah.
And so I
I
think
love
there's like
that.
I don't know. I could change. You might see some models on my Instagram.
Just come out to Boulder, let's play a little
Yeah.
bit. You'll
Yeah.
love it.
I am trying to
But
shoot more. Sorry, this is like, we're getting casual now, but so there's a few photographers who my heroes are changing, so that naturally these are changing. But like the people I love, there's one photographer out in Seattle who shoots mostly weddings, has like a super consistent aesthetic, at least publicly online. Like
Mhm.
it blows my mind. I'm just like, what? Like, do you just shoot in the same light every single time? Like very like same preset, everything. And
Yeah.
I'm like, I try to be consistent, but dang, he is consistent. But every once in a while, he'll shoot, just a solo person, like a fitness model or just a cool lady in a cool swimsuit, because I think like his wife
Yeah.
sells swimwear. So like, and I'm like, I would be into that, like just like getting more experience shooting people by themselves, right? Like we only shoot couples and
Yes. Wait, is this Jordan Boss?
yeah, and it's both. I didn't know, but it's both. So
Oh, okay. Oh.
yeah, he was on
Oh.
the podcast. That's
Good
how I
to
know.
know.
That's the only reason I know.
Oh, okay, okay.
So yeah, he's like so good, and he's also like one of the few wedding photographers who I feel like, this is so stupid, but like him and I talked about this. So I was like, hey, how are we supposed to have an eye artistically that can please the women that will book us? As like him and I both
Oh,
we both
yeah.
love heavy metal. I toured in a metal band. Like we're very like guys, and obviously we appreciate like what we're making, but I want to be better at that.
Mhm.
And we talked about that, and so I think he's really good at that stuff.
I didn't even think about that being like a guy in this industry because like when it comes to weddings, like there's not really a guy who's like out there that's like, oh my gosh, I've been following From the Daisies. Like she has to be my wedding
Yeah.
photographer. Like it's always the
Yeah.
bride.
I mean, you have a
And
flower in your name.
So that's
So
interesting.
sadly, it's like it's
Yes,
gonna stereotypically. We could have outliers in the next few years, but yeah.
But that is crazy because I wonder if that influences like somebody going with me versus you because I'm female and you're male. And I just like, so brides tend to gravitate obviously towards females more. Have you like ever experienced
Not
that?
really. For me, it's been kind of weird, and maybe it's just the way I come. Man, we're getting so meta here. Welcome to the bonus content, everybody. With Steph and Adam, we're gonna weekly. We'll do IG lives. No, we'll just get really weird. So yeah, so I've been full time for like 7 years, but I feel like I've really honed in my brand for like the last 3.5, 4, and there are people book us or book me, and maybe this is a belief that I have. Is people book me because they see themselves in the photos I've already created, right at some
Okay, yeah.
level, and that's the only way I can make this make sense. And so I think we talked about authenticity, and I think there's like an element that is maybe not male female, but like I'm very passionate, and my brand is very passionate about like the underdog or like wedding photography for the rest of us, and
Mhm.
so there's a lot of people who are overweight or different sizes and shapes and colors and orientations and all that stuff. And there's more to it, but like there's that element. And then all that to say, it's probably 99% brides now. Now, granted, this is probably something you, Larkin, and I could talk about, is I went to a very small Christian college where we were not allowed to have ladies in our dorms at all. We had to wear
Okay.
pants, collared shirts all the time, all that kind of stuff.
Wow. I didn't know that was a
Oh
thing.
yeah, girl, you have no idea. They call it a college, but some would call it a cult. No, I'm kidding. I like my experience there, but so at that time, when I first started, there were still a few weddings where they'd be like, "Hey, we need you to have a female second shooter for the bride getting ready." Whereas now I'm like,
Got it.
I just step out for 30 seconds. Like if she doesn't care. And now most of the time, 2021, my brides I always say, this is literally line for line. I'm like, hey, Steph, I'm going to step out. Whenever you feel comfortable, just holler. I'll come back in. That can be whatever level you are.
Yeah.
And they just look at me and they go, Adam, I'm comfortable. And I go, okay. Like whatever. They trust me.
Yeah.
They're like, Adam, don't make something weird. And if it comes out cool, they like
Yeah.
give me the opportunity to make something cool, which sometimes it does. Like granted, I've learned a lot more about what goes on underneath wedding dresses than I have bargained for. It is not as cool as all the drunk dudes ask me about it is, but sometimes we can make something cool.
Yes.
And I want people to feel that comfortable around me, and I want people to feel that comfortable just in general. Like I want people to like. I wish everybody could just walk around naked and they'd be happy with it, and not weird about it, of course.
Dang.
And so yeah, all that to say, I still think it's brides booking me. But I have won over a lot of grooms where they're like, "Ugh, I hate photos," or a photo's a photo,
sure.
but they're like, "All right, I'll let Adam do it." Or I'm the first person they ask when it's like newborn time, maternity time, family time. I'll get like a random Memorial Day, like, "Hey, our family's coming in for Memorial Day." I'm like, "You're doing a photo shoot on Memorial Day?" But so yeah, I don't know. Like, I think I appeal mostly to ladies. I've actually tried to book more same-sex dudes, and I'm just not hitting. So I don't know. I'm getting passed over on Next.
Yeah. Same. Even females. I just feel like maybe, and that's something too, where it's like, oh, I don't have a lot of it on my feed, so like people don't, like you said, like see themselves in my photos like that. But I'm like, nobody's booking me.
Again, that's the advice I would give somebody is like, well, you have to have a styled shoot, and or like make it or find those people. So yeah, you got to post what you want to work more of. Anyway, I've taken way too much of your time, Stephanie, and obviously you have to come back again, and we'll get weirder, whatever that is.
I love it. Thank you for having me. Of course.
So for the 3 weirdos that are still listening, I'm just kidding. I have no idea how many. But for the few people we have left, where can people go to find more about you, find out more about the workshop, and just DM you and tell you they love you, all that good stuff?
Well, my Instagram is just From the Daisies. My website is fromthedaisies.com, and that has all the information about any other creative content shoots that are coming up.
Love it. Awesome.
That's where you can find me.
Boom. Guys, thank you so much for checking out The Bearded Hog. It really means a lot. If you can, leave a like on the video. If you want to see more videos, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell for notifications on when new videos come out immediately. Have a wonderful day, guys, and keep being awesome.